In the heart of Manhattan, where glass towers pierce the sky and ambition flows through the streets like electricity, there are moments that challenge everything we think we know about success, humility, and the masks people wear. This is a story about assumptions, about the price of arrogance, and about a man whose quiet presence would shake the foundations of one of New York's most prestigious law firms. What happens when someone judges a book by its cover? What happens when that book turns out to be worth billions? Stay with us, because this story will make you question everything you thought you knew about power and respect. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We love connecting with our viewers from around the world. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next incredible story. Trust us, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Now let's begin. The morning of September 14th broke over New York City with the kind of crisp clarity that made the concrete canyons of Manhattan look almost beautiful. The sun reflected off the mirrored facades of the financial district, casting long shadows across the bustling sidewalks where thousands of people moved with purpose, each convinced their destination was the most important place in the world. At precisely 8:47 a.m., a yellow taxi pulled up to the entrance of Whitmore & Associates, one of the city's most elite corporate law firms. The building was impressive, a sleek monolith of steel and tinted glass that occupied an entire block on Park Avenue. The lobby, visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows, gleamed with marble floors and modern art installations that screamed wealth and exclusivity. From the taxi emerged a man who looked completely out of place in this temple of corporate power. Khalid Al-Rashid was in his early 40s, with kind brown eyes and a neatly trimmed beard showing the first hints of gray. He wore a simple white thobe, a traditional ankle-length robe, and a red and white checkered gutra held in place by a black agal. His leather sandals were worn but well maintained, and he carried nothing but a small brown leather satchel that had clearly seen better days. He paid the driver with cash, thanked him in accented English, and stood for a moment on the sidewalk, looking up at the imposing building. The September wind tugged at his robe as he took a deep breath and walked toward the entrance. Inside the lobby, the air conditioning was almost aggressive in its chill. Khalid's sandals made soft sounds against the polished marble as he approached the massive reception desk that dominated the space. Behind it sat a woman in her late 20s, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun, her navy suit impeccably tailored, her manicured nails clicking against her keyboard as she worked. Her name was Jessica Hartwell, and she had worked at Whitmore & Associates for 3 years. In that time, she had developed what she considered an essential skill in her position, the ability to instantly assess who mattered and who didn't. She prided herself on knowing which visitors deserved her warmest smile and which could be efficiently dismissed. She didn't look up as Khalid approached. "Excuse me," Khalid said softly, his accent making the words sound almost musical. "I have appointment with Mr. Richard Whitmore at 9 o'clock. Jessica's fingers paused on her keyboard. Slowly, deliberately, she raised her eyes from her computer screen. Her expression shifted from mild irritation to barely concealed disdain as she took in Khalid's appearance, the traditional clothing, the worn sandals, the simple satchel. "I'm sorry," she said, her tone making it clear she wasn't sorry at all. "You have an appointment with Mr. Whitmore?" "Yes," Khalid nodded, maintaining his gentle smile. "At 9 o'clock. My name is Khalid Al-Rashid." Jessica's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. She made a show of looking at her computer screen, then back at Khalid, then at her screen again. "I don't see any appointment under that name. Perhaps you could check again?" Khalid suggested politely. "It was scheduled last week. I flew in from Dubai yesterday specifically for this meeting." "Sir," Jessica said, her voice taking on the patronizing tone one might use with a confused child, "I'm looking at Mr. Whitmore's calendar right now. There is no appointment with—" She paused, as if the name itself was distasteful. "Khalid Al-Rashid." Khalid's smile faltered slightly. "Could there be mistake? Perhaps under different name? My assistant Sarah, she made the arrangements." Jessica sighed audibly. She glanced toward the security guard stationed near the entrance, a large man named Marcus, who had worked building security for 15 years. "Sir, Mr. Whitmore is the founding partner of one of the most prestigious law firms in New York. His time is extremely valuable. I can't just let random people walk in off the street claiming to have meetings with him." The word random hung in the air between them like an insult. "I understand his time is valuable," Khalid said, his voice still calm but with an edge of frustration creeping in. "That is why I flew 7,000 miles to be here. Please, if you could just call his office. I'm not calling anyone. Jessica cut him off. She lowered her voice, though not enough that nearby people couldn't hear. Look, I don't know what you think you're doing here, but this is a corporate law firm. We don't handle immigration cases or asylum requests or whatever it is you need. There are legal aid offices that can help you. Khalid's face remained composed, but something flickered in his eyes, a flash of emotion quickly suppressed. You misunderstand. I am not here seeking legal aid. I am here for business meeting with Mr. Whitmore regarding very significant investment opportunity. Jessica actually laughed, a short, sharp sound that made several people in the lobby turn to look. An investment opportunity? Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. If you don't, I'll have security escort you out. At his post by the door, Marcus shifted uncomfortably. He'd watched this exchange with growing unease. Unlike Jessica, he'd been in New York long enough to know that in this city, you couldn't always judge wealth by appearances. He'd seen tech billionaires in hoodies and real estate moguls in tracksuits, but Jessica was waving at him now, her meaning clear. Marcus approached slowly, his bulk making each step seem deliberate. Everything okay here? This gentleman was just leaving, Jessica said firmly. He doesn't have an appointment. Khalid looked at Marcus, then back at Jessica. For a moment, he seemed to be weighing his options. Then he reached into his satchel. Jessica tensed, but he simply pulled out a business card. Thick, cream-colored stock with elegant embossed lettering. Please, Khalid said, placing the card on the desk. Just give this to Mr. Whitmore. Tell him Khalid Al-Rashid was here. He will understand. Jessica didn't even look at the card. Sir, I need you to leave now. Khalid stood there for a moment longer, studying Jessica's face as if trying to understand something. Then he nodded slowly, picked up his satchel and turned toward the door. His sandals whispered across the marble as he walked away, his white robe swaying slightly with each step. As he pushed through the revolving door and disappeared into the Manhattan morning, Jessica turned back to her computer with a satisfied expression. She noticed the business card still sitting on her desk, and without looking at it, swept it into the trash bin beneath her desk. Thank you, Marcus, she said briskly. Some people really have no sense of boundaries. Marcus said nothing. He returned to his post, but something about the interaction bothered him. He'd seen the man's face as he left. Not angry, not embarrassed, just disappointed, like someone who had expected better from the world. Upstairs on the 42nd floor, Richard Whitmore sat in his corner office, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of Manhattan. At 63, he was a man who had built his reputation on being sharper than everyone else in the room. His silver hair was immaculately styled. His charcoal suit probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, and his desk was a statement piece, a massive slab of reclaimed wood that he'd had shipped from a demolished 19th century factory. He was reviewing contracts when his phone buzzed. His assistant, Margaret Chen, a meticulous woman in her 50s who had been with him for 20 years, appeared at his door. Richard, do you have a 9 o'clock this morning? He looked up, frowning. Should I? Margaret checked her tablet. You have a note here from 3 weeks ago. Meeting with Khalid Al-Rashid, CEO of Al-Rashid Holdings. It says priority, Meridian Tower acquisition, but there's no confirmation that the meeting was actually scheduled. Richard's frown deepened. Al-Rashid Holdings. Why does that sound familiar? They're a Dubai-based investment firm, Margaret said, her fingers flying across her tablet screen. Real estate, technology, infrastructure. She paused, her eyes widening slightly. Richard, their portfolio is valued at approximately $47 billion. Richard's expression changed instantly. He was on his feet before Margaret finished speaking. 47 billion? And we have a meeting with their CEO this morning? According to your note, yes, but I don't see any confirmation. I thought Sarah, your new junior assistant, was supposed to coordinate it. Where is Sarah? She called in sick yesterday and today, some kind of flu. Richard was already moving toward his desk phone. Get me reception. Now. Downstairs, Jessica was feeling rather pleased with herself. She'd efficiently handled what could have been an awkward situation, and now she was helping a nervous young associate find the right conference room for his deposition. Her phone rang. Reception, this is Jessica. Jessica, this is Richard Whitmore. The voice on the other end was clipped. Urgent. Did anyone come to see me this morning? A Middle Eastern gentleman, probably in traditional dress? Jessica felt a small flutter of uncertainty in her stomach. Yes, sir. About 10 minutes ago. But he didn't have an appointment, so I... Didn't have an appointment? Richard's voice rose. What was his name? Khalid something. Al-Rashid, I think? There was a moment of silence on the other end. Then, in a voice that made Jessica's blood run cold, you turned away Khalid Al-Rashid? Sir, he wasn't on the calendar, and he looked... I don't care what he looked like. Richard was shouting now, something Jessica had never heard him do. Do you have any idea who that man is? Did he leave a contact number? A card? Jessica's hands were trembling as she bent down to look in her trash bin. The business card was sitting right on top, And for the first time, she actually read it. Khalid Al-Rashid, founder and CEO, Al-Rashid Holdings, Dubai, London, New York. And below that, in smaller text, net portfolio value, 47B USD. The phone almost slipped from her hand. He left a card, sir. Get it to my office immediately. And Jessica? Clear your schedule for the rest of the day. We need to talk. The line went dead. Jessica stood frozen, staring at the business card. Around her, the lobby continued its normal morning bustle. Lawyers striding purposefully toward elevators, clients checking in for appointments, phones ringing at the reception desk. But for Jessica, everything had narrowed to this moment, this terrible realization of what she'd done. Marcus, who had been watching from his post, walked over. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Jessica couldn't finish the sentence. She looked at the business card again, as if hoping the numbers might change. I need to take this upstairs. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt like it lasted hours. Jessica clutched the business card so tightly her knuckles were white. When the doors opened, Margaret was waiting. Mr. Whitmore is on the phone, she said, her voice professionally neutral, but her eyes holding something that might have been pity. You can wait in the conference room. The small conference room adjacent to Richard's office had a glass wall that looked out over the city. Jessica sat in one of the leather chairs, the business card on the table in front of her like evidence at a crime scene. Through the glass wall of Richard's office, she could see him pacing while talking animatedly on the phone. 20 minutes later, he emerged. His face was flushed, his jaw tight. He sat down across from Jessica without preamble. I just spent the last 20 minutes trying to reach Khalid Al-Rashid, he said quietly. He's not answering his phone. His assistant in Dubai says he's in meetings all day and cannot be disturbed. Do you know what he was here to discuss? Jessica shook her head mutely. The Meridian Tower, Richard continued. It's a proposed 60-story mixed-use development in downtown Manhattan. The financing fell through last month, and the project was about to be canceled. Mr. Al-Rashid was interested in acquiring it, a $2.3 billion investment that would have been the largest deal this firm has ever handled. He paused, letting that number sink in. Our fee for representing him in that transaction would have been approximately $40 million. Jessica felt like she couldn't breathe. But more than that, Richard went on, his voice getting softer, which was somehow worse than when he'd been shouting. Khalid Al-Rashid is one of the most respected businessmen in the Middle East. He's known for his integrity, his philanthropy, and his loyalty. If you do business with him once and do it well, he remembers. He comes back. He refers others. Richard leaned forward. Do you understand what you've done? I didn't know, Jessica whispered. You didn't know because you didn't ask. You didn't check. You made an assumption based on how someone looked. Richard picked up the business card. This card has his personal cell phone number on it. Do you know how rare that is? How much trust that represents? He gave you a direct line to a man whose time is worth thousands of dollars per minute, and you threw it in the trash. Tears were starting to form in Jessica's eyes. I'm sorry. You thought he couldn't possibly be important because of how he was dressed. Richard stood up. Jessica, you're terminated. Effective immediately. Margaret will arrange for HR to process your departure. You have 1 hour to collect your things. Mr. Whitmore, please, 1 hour. He walked to the door, then turned back. You know what the worst part is? Mr. Al-Rashid probably saw exactly what was happening. He probably understood that you were judging him, dismissing him, and he still left his card. He still tried to give us a chance. That's the kind of man he is, and that's the kind of opportunity you cost this firm. After Jessica left, Richard stood at his window, looking out over the city. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Whitmore, I apologize for missing our meeting this morning. There was a confusion at your reception. I understand these things happen. I'm scheduled to return to Dubai tomorrow, but I wanted to let you know that I've decided to take the Meridian Tower investment in a different direction. I've reached out to Morrison and Blake. I hope you understand. With respect, Khalid Al-Rashid. Richard closed his eyes. Morrison and Blake was their biggest competitor. He immediately called his contact at the firm. Richard, good to hear from you, James Morrison answered cheerfully. Too cheerfully. Did you just sign Khalid Al-Rashid? Guilty as charged. We're meeting tomorrow to finalize the Meridian Tower deal. I have to say, I'm surprised you let this one slip away. Not like you. How did you even connect with him? Funny story, actually. He showed up at our office about an hour ago. Said he'd had a disappointing experience at another firm. Didn't say which one, and asked if we'd be interested in discussing the project. Our receptionist, Maria, recognized his name immediately. She'd actually done a case study on Al-Rashid Holdings in her MBA program. James laughed. She practically rolled out a red carpet, had him in my office in 5 minutes. Richard felt sick. Congratulations, James. Thanks. Hey, We should grab lunch sometime. I'll tell you all about working with Middle Eastern investors. They're fascinating, very relationship-oriented, big on respect and protocol. You'd love it." After hanging up, Richard called an emergency partners meeting. By noon, everyone knew what had happened. By evening, it was the talk of every major law firm in Manhattan. By the end of the week, it would be a cautionary tale told in business schools. The receptionist who cost her firm a billion-dollar client by judging a book by its cover. But the story didn't end there. 3 months later, Khalid Al-Rashid was in New York again, this time for the groundbreaking ceremony of the Meridian Tower. The event was covered by major news outlets, not just because of the size of the investment, but because of what Khalid had announced he would do with it. The tower's first 10 floors would be dedicated to a free legal aid clinic, providing services to immigrants and refugees navigating the American legal system. Another 5 floors would house a cultural center, promoting understanding between Middle Eastern and Western cultures. The residential units would include a percentage set aside as affordable housing, well below market rate. "I came to America believing in its promise," Khalid said in his speech, his accent still noticeable but his voice strong and clear. "The promise that here, what matters is not where you come from or how you look, but what you contribute, what you build, what you give back to the community." Sometimes, we all need reminders to live up to that promise. In the crowd, carefully positioned where cameras wouldn't catch them, stood Marcus the security guard. Morrison and Blake had hired him as their new head of building security, a promotion he'd received partly because Maria, the receptionist who'd welcomed Khalid, had been so impressed by his quiet wisdom during a conversation they'd had. Maria herself was now assisting with the Meridian project, her MBA finally getting the recognition it deserved. Jessica Hartwell watched the ceremony on her laptop from her small studio apartment in Queens. She'd been unemployed for 2 months before finally finding work at a small personal injury firm in Brooklyn, a significant step down from Whitmore and Associates, and everyone knew why. The story had followed her. But watching Khalid speak, seeing the genuine warmth in his face as he described his vision for the tower, Jessica felt something shift inside her. She'd spent 3 months angry at herself, at circumstances, at the injustice of losing everything over one mistake. But listening to Khalid talk about second chances, about building bridges instead of walls, about the importance of seeing people's potential rather than just their appearance, she understood something crucial. Her mistake hadn't been just about costing her firm money. It had been about failing to see someone's humanity, their worth, their story. She'd looked at Khalid and seen only what he wasn't, not in an expensive suit, not American, not fitting her narrow definition of what power and success should look like. That evening, Jessica did something she'd been too ashamed to do before. She wrote a letter, not an email, a real letter. On paper, written by hand. She wrote to Khalid Al-Rashid, care of his company's New York office. She didn't make excuses. She didn't ask for anything. She simply apologized, sincerely and completely, for her behavior and for what she'd learned from it. She didn't expect a response. And for 3 weeks, she didn't get one. Then, one day, a cream-colored envelope arrived at her apartment. Inside was a brief note on elegant letterhead. "Dear Ms. Hartwell, thank you for your letter. We all make mistakes. What defines us is what we learn from them. I hope your journey forward is filled with wisdom and compassion. In the Quran, it is written, 'Indeed, Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves. I wish you well. Sincerely, Khalid Al-Rashid.'" Also in the envelope was a check for $5,000. And a note. "I understand the legal profession can be challenging to re-enter. This is to help with any courses or certifications you might need. Consider it an investment in second chances." Jessica sat on her apartment floor and cried. Not tears of shame or anger, but of something like gratitude, mixed with wonder at the generosity of someone she'd treated so poorly. The Meridian Tower opened 18 months later. It became one of Manhattan's most iconic buildings, not just for its architecture, but for what it represented. The legal aid clinic on the lower floors helped thousands of people. The cultural center became a model for interfaith and intercultural dialogue, and the affordable housing units provided homes for dozens of families who otherwise would have been priced out of Manhattan. Khalid Al-Rashid continued to invest in New York and across America, always with the same emphasis on community benefit and social responsibility. He became known not just as a successful businessman, but as a bridge builder, someone who saw past surfaces to potential, past differences to common humanity. As for Richard Whitmore, he implemented major changes at his firm. He brought in diversity and inclusion consultants. He created training programs about cultural competency and unconscious bias. He made sure that every employee from senior partners to reception staff, understood that respect wasn't something you gave to people based on their appearance or status. It was something you gave because they were human beings. The story became legendary in New York legal circles. A cautionary tale, yes, but also a story about redemption, about learning, about the importance of looking beyond surfaces. It was a story about how assumptions can cost us not just money, but opportunities for connection, for growth, for understanding. And sometimes, late at night in his office, Richard would look at a photograph he kept on his desk, a shot of the Meridian Tower at sunset, its glass and steel reflecting the golden light. He kept it there as a reminder of the most expensive lesson he'd ever learned, that true worth can't be measured by appearance, that dignity isn't determined by dress, and that sometimes the most important person in the room is the one you least expect. In a world obsessed with surfaces, with first impressions, with the packaging rather than the content, Khalid Al-Rashid had proven something profound, that quiet dignity speaks louder than loud displays of wealth, that character matters more than clothing, and that how we treat others, especially those we think are beneath us, reveals who we truly are. The $47 billion man in sandals had taught Manhattan a lesson it wouldn't forget, and in doing so, he'd built something far more valuable than any tower, a legacy of compassion, respect, and the courage to see people for who they truly are. As the sun set over New York City that evening, the Meridian Tower stood tall among the other skyscrapers, a monument not just to wealth or ambition, but to the simple, powerful idea that every person deserves to be seen, to be heard, to be treated with dignity, regardless of how they look, where they come from, or what they wear on their feet. The end.